My name's Chris Robertshaw. I was in business on the island, man, for close to 35 years. I then went in towards the end of my working life into politics. I went into politics as an MHK, a member of the House of Keys. I started off as Minister of Social Care with responsibility for all the difficult stuff like benefit system, housing, children and families, adult and elderly care, mental health, very difficult. But he taught me a huge lesson about what was wrong with government and why it didn't work properly. And that became very much my passion. At that stage, the Chief Minister then asked me to become Minister of Policy and Reform. As I've already explained, I was very much, by this time, focused on what on earth was wrong with the way we operated. And I spent a year looking at this in this new role to try and establish what we needed to do. And I got a pretty clear view then of what needed to be done and put it to the Council of Ministers. And the Council of Ministers decided, nope, we don't want to do that. We're too comfortable. And I felt that at that stage, the right thing for me to do was step down. If they didn't want to reform government, I would have been happy as you know, by this time I'm getting on well into my 60s. I would have been happy to step down from politics, but I felt guilty that there really was a problem that was growing with regard to how our government performed, and that I needed to do something about it. And I then, in the next election, stood again as a constituency MHK with a manifesto called the Little Green Book of Government Reform. And I went round and I said to my constituents, please read my manifesto, and if you don't agree with me, please don't vote for me. And I rather hoped that I wouldn't get in. It was, I was there out of a sheer sense of guilt, but they put me back in again. And so I spent the next 5 years continuing to argue the case. Again, I couldn't move the mountain. And stepped down, retired, now into my early 70s. I am increasingly concerned that we still haven't done what we need to do. However, what I should do is step back and explain a very, very quick description of the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man in the 1970s was a pretty poor place, but it developed its finance sector, and you can interpret those words in any which way. But it became very well off. It created and built reserves and spent a lot of money on infrastructure. And sadly, though, with those great successes became political and bureaucratic complacency, and the government grew in size and has continued to grow in size, and now is obese. That is the fundamental problem. Unlike bigger nations that have their own currency, their own fiat currency, who can print money, the Isle of Man can't, because of course it sits within the sterling area, and we have to balance our books. But we haven't balanced our books since 2008, or post 2008. It was actually by the time it really washed up on our shores, the financial crash of 2008. 2010, we lost £200 million of our income through a reduction in our portion of the VAT fund from the UK. And since that time, we have failed to balance our books, and we have lived on the interest on those reserves that we'd accumulated in previous years that I've just discussed. And now it's becoming dangerous. But somehow or other, our financial system is not focusing up to this in the way it needs to. We're not living within our budget. Our government is too big. And sadly, through the way our ministerial system of government has developed, we are losing elements of our democracy. So for those of us who continue to care hugely about it, in response, a group of us are trying to ensure these key issues of balancing the books and really redeveloping, if you like, or reinforcing our democratic process become a significant part of the narrative for the next election, general election, which takes place in September 2026. It's not really about policies, it's about, do we have a good, sound, responsive structure of government or not? And the answer at the moment is that we haven't.